minutes.
No.
Time has become precious in lockdown 1. We've got a hell of a lot of catch up to play, so I'm going to try to do my presentation with lots of slides, but running through them. I mean, it's a very intelligent audience, so I shouldn't be more than 20-25 minutes myself, and then a couple of questions. So let's try to keep it short and sweet.
Will you share the slides with us afterwards, or are they confidential?
No, I can certainly share them with you. Let's have a chat about that. But as far as the YouTube recording is concerned, will there be a time limit to that? In terms of how long will it be on YouTube? Because this is my bread and butter, and I don't want everybody to see my presentation. I update on a weekly basis, but still, so I'm not very keen on the YouTube idea, quite frankly.
Oh, I see. We didn't ask you that. Okay.
I'm self-employed. I'm a public speaker, but then the public went into hiding.
Should we put it on for a week or so and then take it off?
No, that's fine.
A week. Okay. It'll go on Friday. We'll take it off next Friday.
Okay, no problem.
And Roeloef, that big announcement that you will be making at the end, we're going to keep that up there, to remind us of that big announcement.
No, there's several big announcements.
Yeah, but that big one right at the end. I'm just making sure everybody's going to listen right to the end.
Well, you got me worried now.
Sorry, guys. The guys are joining now. It always takes a bit of time to let them in. We've got our computer guy with Anneke in the office, so yeah, they're running nicely. They're coming in nicely.
Can I ask Andries a quick question? Is he going to use slides?
I am going to use a few slides, okay. Not many.
Okay.
It's going to be about cars.
Yeah. Nico, while you're letting everybody in, maybe you should sing for us, sort of just to keep us busy.
Jim is already laughing.
Nico, can I
please, Andries,
test my
please
slides?
Don't inflict that on us.
Yeah.
I think you can test your slides. Jock is connected. Jock.
I don't see a share screen option. I only see an open share tray. Would it be that one?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. Can you guys see my slides?
Fantastic.
Yes,
Fantastic.
now, yeah.
And as I scroll down, you can see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Thank you very much. Right.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So that's going to work great. We're in the region of 36 people, so they're still coming in. So can we just hang on a small while and we'll kick off.
Afternoon.
Who's in? Guy.
Yes, hi. Hi, Nico.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fine. Where you situated?
Yeah, I'm in Nottingham in England.
Oh, yes. So you're from the UK?
Yeah.
I see the sun is shining all your lights on.
Well, it is at the moment. We're about to go into lockdown tomorrow.
What?
Another COVID lockdown. So that's not so good.
I don't even.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How are things in South Africa?
We're still under level 1 lockdown, but it's going well. It's reducing. In the mining industry, we're keeping very, very good stats, and it shows it's coming down. But everybody's talking about the second wave.
Yeah.
Which has caused me to go to the bottle store yesterday to go and get some more whiskey,
Good whiskey, I hope.
Yeah. Irish whiskey.
Oh,
Aye, great.
Purely
Hello, Jim.
medicinal.
Hi. I'm just trying to get my camera on. I don't know why it's not working.
We can see you. We can see you.
Oh,
I can't believe you're going into lockdown again tomorrow. Full
Yeah.
lockdown.
Yeah, the Parliament's voting on it today, but it'll go through. They've got the numbers.
Yo.
Hello, Nico.
Who's there?
Anthony.
Hello, Anthony. How are you doing in Elspruit?
Good, thanks. And you, man?
No complaint.
my mute and then screen sharing. I tried, and now try the people. No, there they are.
People are still joining, so let's just see.
Because it showed it.
Jeremy.
Screen share. I called it up. It came this big. I asked for the entire screen and it disappeared.
Your mic is on. Your mic's on, but your screen is not on.
Hallo Nico, ek kan julle nie sien nie.
Hello Gert, how are you?
Lekker man, ek het gesukkel om in te kom hier by julle. Jo, hulle moes weer vir my die maak is nou daar. Kan julle my sien?
Hallo.
Ja, ons kan jou sien, Gert.
Want ek sien julle nie.
Right. Yeah, there's a screen share. What is sharing a screen at the moment? That's blocking it.
Gert,
Okay,
can
Yeah.
you hear me? We've got Jim.
I'm listening.
Jim is in, and Guy from the UK is in. So we've got two overseas. Yes.
Fantastic. Hi Jim.
Afternoon. Great to see everybody.
We've got a board director from PPC, Charles Nadir, on Gert.
Hello Charles, ja, fantasties. Ja. I still have problems seeing anyone, but it's okay. But in the meantime, I'm listening.
Nico, somebody is sharing a screen at the moment. I think it might be your admin people.
Yes, it looks like it, yes.
Maybe if they can stop sharing the screen, then, yeah, there it is.
Sê, nou sien ek. Ja. Hallo Andries.
Anneke, Raymond Kapling, press guys battling to get in. I don't know why.
Nico, they had to send a new link for me to share. The one on the email didn't work. It just didn't work, yeah.
Now these things have got to, yeah, I see 2 or 3 guys are WhatsApp me and said they can't get in. But Anneke will let them in.
Julle wil mos nie Zoom gebruik nie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you want to use this, that's your trouble. Zoom is just much better. We did our investor presentation the other day with 120 people and absolutely seamless, no problem. All on
Yeah.
What do we do with the fire alarm? Do we all run?
No, I'll have to pay for the next round. That was mine.
The guys are still coming in, so it's a bit of a problem. It takes a while to come in, but they are coming in.
Okay.
Give it another minute or so, then we'll kick off so long. Gert?
Ja, Nico.
Guy is from the
Yeah.
UK. They're going into lockdown tomorrow.
Yeah, tonight they're voting on it in the Parliament today, but they've got the numbers to make it happen. But it's all based on out-of-date figures, Nico. It's not right. You know, the figures are showing that COVID levels have plateaued, and there's in many areas they're going down, but the lockdown's still going to be voted through. It's madness. I think, Jim, in Ireland, you've got similar issues there. There's a lot of conflicting views on whether the lockdown should happen or not. And I know the Irish government rejected the scientists' findings, didn't they, not long ago?
Yeah, they did, but we are in a what they call level 5 lockdown, which is not as severe as last March, April. You know, these things have, people are increasingly aware of the devastating economic consequences.
Yeah.
And job losses, and you know, it's a blunt instrument. It all comes back to personal responsibility and what you do. And I think the penny is dropping with everybody and with the politicians. I think there's increasing disquiet at lockdowns, and I think the same will happen across Europe. There are actually a lot of protest marches like that against this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the problem is that the full scientific evidence hasn't been put before the public. This is the problem. The governments are going on one set of figures. They're not showing people the full set, and you know, we're treating us as adults that we actually make our own minds up as to what's going on. But we're just spoon-fed one lot of stats. That's no good. You know, people want to see all the evidence. And then you make your mind up. You know, you can only be properly informed if you have all the facts. That's the frustrating thing. It's the same in industry. You want all the facts, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but also if the advisors are intellectuals and not business people, they would give a different kind of advice that
yes, very much so. Yeah,
might need to survive.
I think there's some space saving going on as well. You know, once we had the first lockdown, if you basically say when the figures go up or perceive one set of figures to go up and you don't lock down again, what was the first lockdown about? Why did you do it? You open yourself up to challenge on that level. So I think there's a lot of face saving. They're trying to face save the government. They're trying to say, well, it was justified the first time, so we have to do it again. So there's a lot of that. No politicians want to admit they've made mistakes, especially at this sort of level.
No, but a lockdown buys you time in order to get your facilities in order. But that's been done.
Yeah, that's right.
So now we're there. So
Yeah.
So what will this lockdown now buy you?
Well, supposedly to get the test and trace, but the point is you can only do that if the public are fully compliant, and lots of people in the UK, probably elsewhere, they won't give their full details. They won't give all the associates or that they've been with. They just don't want to. They won't do it, and they won't isolate because they can't afford to. They need to work. You know, they've got all that going on.
I think we're running into time now. I've spoken to the office and we're going to start now.
Okay.
Don't mind, because we're 15 minutes late. So I think what we're going to start, we've got quite a good attendance. They're coming in slowly. But I think the first thing that we're going to ask is that people, you know, disable your video and your mic, because I'm hearing background noises. Somebody's mic's open. Might be a radio or a child or Harida, and then stay muted, and then I think we just raise our hands when we want something and keep the discussion short. The speakers will start soon. Our first speaker is Mr. Andries, who's the CEO of AfriMat, and he will give us an introduction, and he will most probably allow us to ask questions or make comments. So I'm not going to, these introductions often take very long on these systems, and people want to talk a lot. So let me introduce or hand over to Andries, and I will mute myself and also do away with my camera. Thanks for joining. The numbers are still picking up. So Andries, thank you for agreeing to this. I'm very chuffed that you and Dr. Roeloef is our guest today. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nico, and good afternoon to everyone out there, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully we in South Africa will be able to dodge the bullet and not have a second lockdown. We just heard it is just something that we simply cannot afford, not as a country and not as an industry. So I really hope that we won't have to go there. Thank you for the invitation, Nico. It's a privilege to be able to join somebody of the stature of Dr. Roeloef Botha, who is a very well-known economist and somebody that I deeply respect. I will try and really just give you a very quick overview of the way we see the industry in the run-up to just before the lockdown, and then what is happening now after the lockdown. I think we all know what the lockdown did to us. I'll give you some of my views on what we think can be expected of the not too distant future. I will make a comment on some corporate action that might happen, and it's I know we all like the rumors out there, so let's spread some rumors. And then after that, I would like to just make a comment on the importance of Aspasa for the industry in our view. So I am going to try and share my slides, and as you might have picked up in the previous part, I am not a big fan of Teams. What do you see on the screen at the moment, Nico? Can you tell me? Because I've got no clue what you are seeing.
A nice graph with blue stripes and a red stripe.
Is that the Afrimat construction index?
Index, yeah.
Right.
That's correct, yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll try to operate this. What you see in front of you on the screen is the what we call the Afrimat Construction Index. It was something that Dr. Roeloef Botha and myself developed. Roeloef, I can't remember. I think it was in 2013 that we developed this index. The reason why we developed it in those days was there was a very strong negative message that went out. Because the big listed construction companies, they were big in those days, they had the press, and they were telling the press of just how bad the industry is and how bad things were going. That was not our experience at the time, and we thought that some of the big construction companies of the time were making some strategic mistakes. That was reflected in their numbers, and they were trying to find good excuses. So we developed the Afrimat Construction Index. It's made up of, I think, 9 different elements, and I think Roeloef might speak about it a bit later. But that really gave us an indication of what was going on. So we used the basis of the first quarter of 2011. That was really what we thought was the point where the economy itself back together again after the 2008 crisis. We used that as a basis, and we tried to show what was happening. Now, if you look at the graph that you have in front of you on the screen, you'll see that the four-quarter average, which is you'll see a very clear cyclicality in there, where we all know that normally we have a peak around the middle of the year, and a drop off in the fourth quarter, or the first quarter actually. I think it's normally in the first quarter that we see this drop off. It goes with the holiday season, and we saw that seasonality, but we also saw the constant growth. We saw that four-quarter graph growing from around about 110 basis points or index points to just under 130 in early 2017. That's when we saw a turning point, and we saw a gradual sliding of that index. And then quite importantly is that in the first quarter of this year, that is before the lockdown, in this country we saw that for the first time we went below 100, below the reference point of Q1 of 2011, which is an important point for us as an industry. And then obviously quarter two, that was when the lockdown hit us, and we see that, you know, literally this index dropped to about 65. Now, I just want to make sure that I get the next slide up. This is where technology frustrates me. Right. You should see the contribution of construction to the GDP of South Africa. And there, once again, you can see that construction was contributing around about 3.5% of the GDP until around about 2017, and then it started gradually slowing down. Once again, we saw that sliding in the early 2020, and we can also see the growth rate of the GDP versus the growth rate of construction, and you can see the what is that color? Brown color, yellow color. There is the GDP, and the blue is construction. So you can see all these figures show that construction in the last couple of years have really been under pressure. What is quite interesting, I just added this in here for us. I don't actually think that this agrees with our experience. This is a graph that Sunroll published on what their trend is. This is a graph we got from their website, and on there you can see that they say that they are spending at this stage almost 25 billion rand on roadworks. We don't actually see it, but that's what they say. Also an interesting stat, just sort of as what is going on in the industry. There you can see what they say the conditions of our roads are, where in 2020 they say 14.4% of our roads is very good, and 6% is very poor, compared to 4% last year. And in my traveling around the country, I think I've driven on all 6% of those poor roads of Sunroll. I think their roads are going backwards. We also see the age of our roads, where you can see of the 25,000 kilometers that they say they're responsible for, 18,800 kilometers of that is older than 25 years. And as we know, roads are not designed to be that old. Let me just get back there. So what that really means, and let me try and get out of this again. Let me just see. Right, there we go. So what this means, in my view, is we are in an industry that has been under pressure. The fact that we are still here says that, you know, we have the tenacity. We could go through the last couple of years that's been tough. Those of us that have had the right sort of strategic initiatives would have positioned ourselves correctly, but it's not an easy industry that we're in. The lockdown did us no favors. It was very, very difficult for most of us. For us in Afrimat, I really hope that I will never see that again in my career, that for an entire month we see costs running. We paid our people in full over the period. So we saw the costs running and we saw no revenue whatsoever. That was really, really painful, and I think you've all seen that. It's been extremely difficult. And for me personally, that was a big challenge to actually make those decisions during that period, knowing that you don't know exactly when the revenue is going to return. So we got the industry back, or the customers came back from about level 3. For us in Afrimat, and I know in my discussions with many of the other players in the industry, it's a very similar picture. We also saw the picture that was published by some of the listed players, such as PPC or Buildmax, for instance. Is it Buildmax? I think I've got the name wrong now, but they Cashbuild, sorry, Cashbuild. Where do I come from with Buildmax? Cashbuild. They've shown the sharp increase in demand for products. We saw that in June, July, August, September, October. So it's the 5th month now that we've seen a very strong resurgence of demand in a lot of areas around the country. It is starting to show that there's a good balance between private spending, especially in the rural areas. We see very strong private spending, but also we're starting to see rural government spending, provincial government spending, roadworks picking up, low-cost housing picking up. So as we speak, it is looking a lot better in our business, and I'm sure in most of your businesses, than it looked a year ago. And hopefully that trend that we saw is starting to turn around. So if we look at the future, and I'm going to try and share a slide again. Let me just get my act together. It is really a frustration, this technology. Why is this so difficult? Let me try it this way. There was the one I just had. And there it is. Right. We all saw the government gazette that came out on the 24th of July. We saw the work that was in there, and the good news about it, it is gazetted. There is accountability to it now. We see that water and sanitation will take about 106 billion. Energy projects, including renewable energy, will be 58 billion. Roads, 47 billion. Human settlements, 138 billion. And I think many of us will agree that the human settlements part is is definitely picking up momentum. And I think it also has something to do with the fact that we have local government elections next year. So we start. So where we are right now, from where I sit, I can see an industry that was on a slow decline. We had this severe bump with a lockdown, but all of a sudden things have changed, and I think it's positive. It's not all going to be moonshine and roses. It's going to take some time for the industry to recover, but I really do think it's an opportunity for us as an industry to take hands and build the industry up again. I think the mid-tier construction companies are coming through stronger and stronger, and I think that is becoming a very, very prominent part of the industry. So all in all, we had a tough time. It was extremely tough during the lockdown, but I do think it's going to be a lot better now. And I'm very interested to see what Roeloef says when he looks in his crystal ball in terms of the bigger economic indicators. If we move on to corporate action, it's very interesting. We've seen that some of the players have actually gone out and put some of their assets up for sale, or said that they were going to sell it. We know that there are discussions going on behind the scenes amongst players. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how the next couple of months and the next year or so plays out. I think there'll be a significant repositioning. We might see some new entrants into the industry. I've even heard rumors of Chinese people walking around kicking tires, but I believe they also went back again without buying anything. So let's see. It's going to be very interesting. I think we're going to see some decks on the some chairs on the decks being moved around, and let's watch the press and see what's happening there. The last comment I want to make is around Aspasa. Nico will tell you that about 10 years ago, I was not a fan of Aspasa at all. Since then, we've realized the important role an industry body like that can play. In the first place, we all know of the good work that they've done to change the industry of the image of the industry from a rough and ready industry. Nico, I won't use the word cowboys again, but that was the image of the industry then amongst a lot of us. And I think Aspasa is probably the organization that changed that for us, where through the health and safety audits, the help with getting the health and safety up to standards, the environmental audits, all these things have really helped a lot to get the industry to be a very well respected, and where I personally move with and have interaction with the authorities, the industry is really well respected, and that's a big change from a couple of years ago. And that was Aspasa, that was Nico Pinaar and his and the work that Aspasa has done. And I really do think that we need to support them in that. But another part that happens behind the scenes that we don't always know about, but Nico and his executive team, they do a lot of lobbying, and they do a lot of work behind the scenes. For instance, the latest mining charter, there are tables in there for making provision for smaller players and how they can be accommodated. Those things came right from Aspasa. That was Aspasa members that drew that up, presented it to the Department of Minerals, to the DMR, and it was accepted just like that and included in there. And I'm not saying the charter is perfect, not at all, but it is a hell of a lot better than it would have been had we not had the interaction of Aspasa. So from my side, I really do want to recommend that those of you that are not members or not paying your membership fees, this is an important organization and we must keep it alive. It has a very, very important role, especially with the authorities and things that's happening like that. So with that, I really do hope that as a country we can really get this drive, this stimulating the economy through the infrastructure spend. We can really get that off the ground even more, drive it even harder. I do believe it will be. We as an industry will have a big part to play to rebuild the economy and get it up and running. And each of us have a role to play. So with that, my best wishes to each one of you. It's going to be a tough year ahead to get our businesses to the potential that it can be, but we've come so far, and I'm sure we can go further. So with that, Nico, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hand you over to Nico.
Thanks, Andries. Thanks a lot for that clear statement. I don't know if you want to take one or two comments or questions. If you would just maybe take two. If there's anybody who would like to maybe make a comment or ask a question before Dr. Roeloef starts. Anybody? Guy?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how close are we now? The market's improved. How close are we to where we are normally in terms of the average for South African demand and production?
Yeah, Guy, if you look at the latest information, and we can ask Roeloef, he has more accurate information. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to share that information amongst each other, so we're working on indirect information. But we are still at this moment around about the 2011 levels, I would guess, Roeloef, for the latest information.
Yes, for some of the indicators that are included in the AfriMat index, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I've had to switch my mic, but anyway, so we're getting there. Some of them are above the average of the index or the base period of 100. Others are still lagging a little bit behind, like the value of building plans passed in the larger municipal areas, but the trend is very encouraging. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we're going to move on. Charles, you don't want to ask?
No, I'm fine. Thanks very much for the insight, Andries. It was very interesting. I think Roland van Wijnen is also on the talk, on the meeting, if he wants to maybe make a comment. But I think generally we sort of confirm what Andries is experiencing from our side. Roland, maybe if you want to say something.
Thanks, Charles. No, nothing else than thanks, Andries. Insightful and aligned with what you said, what we see as well.
Thanks, Andries. Then we're going over to Dr. Roeloef Botha. As he says, the most handsome guy on the screen.
How much money do you want to borrow?
A lot.
I'm a part-time lecturer, so you're knocking on the wrong door here. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes, I can see them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I can see them. Thanks, Roeloef.
Okay, let's get cracking. Just for those that don't know me, I've been in this game for the better part of 5 decades, and I must say outright that it's a privilege to work with somebody like Andries. What he's done to that company, and through diversification, good management, and the right skills, is just unbelievable. If I'd been smarter, I would also have become an engineer, but I chose a soft option. And I must just recommend also that you try to get on the mailing list for the AfriMat Construction Index. I think it's currently in South Africa the most reliable indicator of what's in this industry. It's not 100% foolproof because we do rely on other statistical agencies. So my task essentially, and I'm going to touch on some of the specific indicators included in the AfriMat Construction Index, which is published quarterly. And broadly, I agree with everything Andries has said, but just as a bit of a background, if we just look at what happened initially. Now, if a country's bond yield starts going north at a rapid rate, as we did in March, it's bad news, because that means that the value of your bonds are declining, and it means that you're going to pay a hell of a lot of money to borrow money, and our government needs to borrow money, like most governments right now. But then it recovered, and I was fortunate to be on a radio discussion with several other economists at the end of March, when some of them were predicting a yield of 14, 15, when I predicted a 300 basis points decline within 4 months, and I got that one right. I don't always get it right, but when I do, I try to tell as many people as possible. The Rand exchange rate also went through the roof. By the way, this of course is the price of a dollar, not of a Rand. So if you were to calculate the reciprocal here, you will see a clear V-shaped recovery, and that is my favorite letter right now, because you see a V-shaped recovery everywhere, and I'm going to really lay it on as far as that's concerned. If you maybe get bored, you can count the V's if you use some imagination on this slide, and you were to calculate the reciprocal, which is the value of the Rand from just before COVID, during COVID, and after the lockdown was eased. You see a very clear V. Significant strengthening of the Rand. It is still undervalued. On this slide, it's a bit technical. All you need to maybe look at is the red line is where the Rand should be, where it's accurately valued. The blue line is in fact the value. So when that declines, it means the Rand is depreciating. And if it increases, if it moves north, it means it's strengthening. And it's interesting, 2 observations. In the first place, the Rand has been overvalued on 3 occasions after our first democratic elections. It took a knock in the world recession over here. It took a knock with Zuptagate earlier than that, prior to that, the Argentina financial crisis. And then President Ramaphosa was elected. And look what happened. The Rand was, it was on its way back to overvalued territory when the trade war and the coronavirus hit us. And it's turned the corner again, as far as I'm concerned. I want to predict that the Rand will continue strengthening with a lot of volatility over the next 12 to 24 months. I got the recovery in 2002 right, and I got the recovery in 2016 right, when we had a finance minister. This is an embarrassment. I must tell our international guests, this country, I think, is the only emerging market of note that had a finance minister who was a weekend special. Unfortunately, that's behind us now. I am also reminded of the fact that a statistician is a person who will tell you if your feet are in the oven and your head is in the freezer, you are quite comfortable. So please bear with the data, but that's what we've got. Our public debt GDP ratio prior to COVID was just below 60. It's going to go to 80 now. The point I want to make here is that this is not a South African problem. This is a global problem. You can add between 10 and 20 percentage points to the public debt GDP ratios of every single country in the world. Let's say countries of note, which would exclude countries like North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and of course Zimbabwe. So what should we do? Should we try to spend less? Should government not fix the roads, not build houses? That would be a disaster. And Tito Mboweni is smart enough, and he was smart enough with the mini budget not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, to realize that what we need to do is to take it easy. Fiscal consolidation is another word for fiscal austerity. So if you look at fortunately, this is a very learned audience. So just look at what are we signaling on this slide. It's the public debt divided by the GDP. It's an equation. So the public debt consists of government expenditure minus government revenue. Ultimately, that's what determines your debt. And you have a denominator, the GDP. So if you take it easy with on the fiscal side, yes, obviously our civil servants, they can can their increases for the next couple of years. That's fine, but they should not curtail their expenditure on infrastructure, and they're not going to do that. Great news, because capital formation has a pervasive multiplier effect in the economy. The minute you spend money on capital formation, construction is the most labor-intensive sector of this economy. And I'm not surprised at all that a president of the stature and intelligence of Cyril Ramaphosa has targeted infrastructure as his way to prove in the next couple of years actually grow this economy. And I think he's going to succeed. So let's assume that they start building roads and they start building dams and they start building houses. And they are doing that, by the way. They've started. These are not promises anymore. So your GDP is going to increase, make no mistake about that. You're going to employ a lot of people. And what happens next? Your tax revenues increase. So you are addressing both elements of this equation. Your public debt, your public expenditure minus your government revenue with a slight lag, that's going to decline, and your GDP will increase, so the sum declines. So quite frankly, I think we're on the right track. And our debt servicing costs, a percentage of gross national income, is entirely manageable. I saw a newspaper report suggesting that some South Africans are paying 60% of their income on debt. Our government is paying less than 7%, so I think they're in a pretty good space as far as that's concerned. And this slide, this is in Afrikaans we say hartseer. This is really sad, because what has happened with state capture is that your state-owned enterprises, they pilfered so much money. There was an infusion of incompetence in most SOEs under Zuma. Trevor Manuel, one of our previous finance ministers, is on record for saying that the worst disaster ever to hit South Africa was Jacob Zuma. Mr. Zuma thinks it's Jan van Riebeeck, but I don't agree with it. And of course, the people that he appointed, the Tomiyanis, the Brian Molefes, the Dudu Miyenis. I mean, just look what that lady did to South African Airways. It is incredible. And I think the Zondo Commission is still waiting for her. And I would be very surprised if they don't start getting her orange suit ready with those little bird prints on, because she's got a good chance to go to jail one day. I would be very surprised. The point I want to make here is that all three of those lines are going to move upwards, and as far as the private sector is concerned, it has already happened. Because what is happening now is that they are getting rid of the incompetence, and they are infusing the public sector, especially with better skills. 1,000, this is an interesting snippet, 1,200 applicants were received for the technical advisory panel to assist government with the implementation of the Sustained Infrastructure Program. This is unbelievable news. And if they're smart, they will use some of these people also to assist him to fix our municipalities. You know, if we start doing that, we are a home and dry as far as I'm concerned. The world's economies are taking off again. I never thought I'd be pleased to see the oil price increasing, but that's a sign of growth. There's another V. And if you were to use your imagination and include February's PMI, that's the Purchasing Managers Indices, of the 6 largest economies in the world, you will see a pronounced V for every single one of them, and it's only Japan that is still just below the neutral level. Above 50 is expansion, below 50 is neutral, and that is a incredibly pronounced V. Of course, China, they took their knock. A recent headline, Farmers Weekly, on a webinar that I participated in, the journalist, he printed the caption, which I thought was quite smart. He said, Dr. Botha warns against getting trapped in April. We all know that April was unbelievably bad. Andries told us about that. I mean, there's hardly anybody except maybe some, the agricultural sector was okay. The food retailers, they were still doing fairly well. But just about everybody else had to just stop doing whatever they were doing. And that's a disaster, but it didn't last very long. And the V-shaped recovery is all around us. In the history of the IMF, it has never happened that you've had such a large spread, as you'll see on this slide, between 1 year's growth forecast and the next. But what people should concentrate on is the burgundy, or somewhere between burgundy and brown, maybe a pinotage color. Concentrate on next year's growth. And if you were to include 2019's GDP figures, which were all above zero, even South Africa's case, marginally above zero, you will see another 7 V's on this slide. Pretty pronounced V's. I find this slide quite interesting. It signals in one slide one of the key characteristics of the lockdown. Uber's revenue from rides dropped by 75%. Their revenue from Eats doubled, more than doubled. So the Eats wasn't really such a big deal to them. Now it's double the rides revenue. And it's not going to shrink tremendously because people have gotten used to this bit of a luxury. So there are many sectors of the economy in the digital space, also in delivery, etc. If you look at these companies, Facebook, Microsoft, Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, and they have pervasive value chains, their revenues have received a fillip. And that was induced by COVID, so COVID wasn't all bad. My sincere condolences to anybody that lost friends and family. Now, as far as South Africa's V-shaped recovery is concerned, I just want to start with a slide which is not a V-shape. I haven't included the second quarter yet. I haven't got that data yet from SAR, from Reserve Bank. But if you look at the trend line for short-term insurance premiums, which are running at about 33 billion rand per quarter in this country, that's a hell of a lot of money. And that positive growing trend line will not occur unless people are buying assets. So that's a good sign. And we were sort of more or less gearing up for higher growth when COVID hit us. One of the reasons we're recovering fast, of course, is that the services sectors are almost 70% of GDP, but all the primary sectors come to the party. Agriculture and mining have been the mainstays of our economy in the last couple of months. And if you don't believe me, look at Afrimat's results. You can also look at our maize crop. In physical terms, it's the second largest maize crop in our history. In rand terms, it's the largest, thanks to the rand, of course. There's another V, the Agbiz IDC Agricultural Confidence Index. There's another V, value added by agriculture. There's another V, we have a structural increase in our foreign income receipts. This is actually not COVID related. This is just unadulterated good news. Income receipts to income payments are moving up, which is a sign of an emerging market that has the ability, in fact, to invest large sums of money in overseas equities, in overseas properties, and of course in overseas bonds. And now the V's just are coming thick and fast. Mineral sales at current prices hits an all-time record in August this year. Two of my previous jobs, I'd like to share with you, were financial editor of a daily newspaper, and I was a management accountant at Bakery Group. And I learned two important lessons in those jobs. People do not like stale news, and they don't like stale bread. And I'm giving you fresh data. This is a really nice V. Now, if we add up our mineral sales for the first 8 months of this year, that's the latest data I've got, we've also hit an all-time record. And the Afrikaans viewers that follow the Burger or the Beeld, two Afrikaans major papers in South Africa, one here in Gauteng and other parts, and the Burger in the Cape, you are welcome to get a copy tomorrow morning. My column is in my bi-weekly column on the main editorial page, just below the cartoon. But it's not funny, it's a serious column. And I'm writing about the splendid performance of mineral sales. This is unbelievable, a new record, January to August in a pandemic year. So well done to the primary sectors. A dramatic recovery in retail trade sales. And as far as the general dealers are concerned, which constitute just about roughly half of total retail trade in South Africa, running at about 40 billion rand per month. That was at a higher level in August this year than in June last year. And Black Friday is approaching. So that's the first peak that we've got now, and then the Christmas peak will also be coming. Also, trade sales also doing very well. And the main drivers of this V-shaped recovery of wholesale trade sales is in fact construction materials and agriculture and the resources required in the resources sectors, which once again tells you that the economy is gearing for growth. Another V, which is a tricky one because there's a cynical comment on how to make a small fortune on the JSE. You start with a big one, but I don't believe that's the truth, depending on when you buy and when you sell, of course. And there's a clear V-shaped recovery. I've taken a bit of a knock in the last couple of days. It's a funny phenomenon, but virtually every year in August, equity markets around the world take a bit of a beating. It creates a buying opportunity, by the way. Just a bit of trivia before I get to the growth drivers. The composition of our CPI. Now, this tells you obviously what we're spending our money on. And if I can just go back to that. So housing and utilities, that's electricity, water, etc., followed by food, quite predictable for a country like South Africa and most parts of the world, quite frankly. Transport, insurance, recreation, and alcohol. My students tell me that alcohol should be counted with food, which makes it almost number one. One of my students told me the other day that beer is certainly a staple food. But now let's go down the list to education and health. Health right at the bottom. So this country spends more on alcohol than on education and health combined. And I must tell you that maybe we should drink a little bit less, and maybe we should study a little bit more. Our orange exports are just going through the roof. It's as if the rest of the world believes South African oranges will prevent COVID. And this is good news for us. I've got a friend here in Northwest. He has made a killing. He bought a new bakkie. For the overseas guys, that's what we call an LDV in South Africa, pickup in America, with orange moonshine. We call it in Afrikaans, Lemoen Mampoer. 150 rand a bottle, liter bottle. He made a killing during COVID. He was, because Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is one of his friends, by the way. So somebody told me that some of these members of our command council, these are the people that told us you can smoke marijuana that you plant in your backyard, but you cannot smoke Stuyvesant. He told me these guys are so narrow-minded. When they look through a keyhole, they use both eyes. Just on a lighter note. And just some trivia questions to make us feel better about South Africa. We performed the world's first heart transplant. We are one of only 17 countries, and we're in the top 10 that are classified as mega diverse. We are the only country in the world to have matched Stuttgart's production standards for Mercs. We blew Australia and New Zealand in the final round, and a lot of other countries in the previous rounds out of the water for scientific capability in the wording of the SKA project. Another one is these breakwater protection barriers. We call it the dolos in Afrikaans, and that's sort of a generic name for it. It was designed by a Mr. Kruger, also from East London. He passed away a couple of years ago. Brilliant engineer. We've got the world's largest wine cellar in Parel. We've got a song in Afrikaans, Polly gaan Parel toe, probably for the wine. We've got the most official languages in the world, 11 of them. And we have the best World Cup record for rugby of any team. And if you haven't noticed, I've got my 95 World Cup tie on. It was presented to me by Louis Late Jr., the late Louis Late Senior, son. He was in my class. Needless to say, he passed Economics 1, and I became I had entrance to the VIP lounge at Ellis Park. There are fringe benefits to being a lecturer. This is an incredible slide. Until last year, vehicles and components were in pole position every year for several years as far as foreign exchange earnings are concerned, with the usual suspects in closely behind them: platinum, gold, iron ore, and a little bit down on the list, coal. In years gone by, platinum, gold, iron ore, and coal were the dominant ones. Look at agriculture and food. This is incredible stuff. So once again, the point I'm making is that if you have such a solid primary sector base as we have in South Africa, with their pervasive value chains, you can get out of a pandemic like this a little bit better, a little bit faster, and more streamlined than most other countries. Okay, growth drivers en route to 2021. This is a very symbolic slide. If you look at that little machine there, I don't think we have the faintest idea what they are still going to be capable of in future. So watch out for them. They can be very useful, but they can also be pretty dangerous. We've got some other V's. These are some of the indicators which are included in the AfriMat Construction Index. The value of building plans passed. Once again, clear V-shaped recovery, but I agree with Andries. It was very clear. And he showed his first slide was the AfriMat Construction Index, which embodies all of them on it's a composite index on a weighted basis. And the industry was under pressure, make no mistake about that. You cannot change decades of mismanagement in the public sector, plus high interest rates, which increase the cost of capital, lower public sector expenditure on infrastructure, and lower investor confidence. You cannot change that effect around overnight. It's like a tanker at sea. If you are going to change direction, it is going to take a bit of time. And then if you run into an iceberg called COVID, then it takes you a little bit longer. Well, we didn't run into it. I think we just, went around it, but that took time. And it's very irritating, I suppose. But if you look at the building, I actually cannot pin toolbar. I cannot see my heading here. But that was the building material sales at current prices. This is brilliant stuff. We are, as you can clearly see, we are at a higher level than we were on average. Now we're still just below the third quarter average, and the third quarter, of course, every year we build up steam. Mid-December, the construction sector more or less closes down, the building sector in South Africa, but then they work overtime like crazy to get everything finished. So we usually have a pretty good third and fourth quarter, and we're very close to that level. And as far as hardware retail sales are concerned, this is brilliant stuff. I mean, the do-it-yourself guys are having a field day because many people are never going to go back to the office. They are going to spend in future 95% of their time working from home. And home is not always conducive to webinars and concentration because there are kids and dogs and cats and what have you. So there's a hell of a lot of stuff happening in that field. Another point, which is I just want to mention along the line, the migration of South Africans to the rest of the world, this diaspora of ours, that has ground to a halt. Few countries want to take in people from overseas unless they are rocket scientists and beyond qualified, because unemployment is still a problem in many countries in the world. So they are staying put. So I expect really a lot of activity and an uptick in every sector of the residential housing market, from bottom to top, but especially, of course, the RDP houses, which will hopefully take off again soon. Other growth drivers is import replacement. This is one of the cornerstones of President Ramaphosa's new recovery and reconstruction plan. And just to demonstrate, just for 6 manufacturing groups, this is what we import from Asia, mainly from China, 165 billion rands worth of stuff. The interesting thing is that we manufacture all of this stuff in South Africa and we export all of this. So what is happening here? I think everybody agrees with me that your average Chinese manufacturer probably gets between 10 and 50% of their production costs as a subsidy from a military dictatorship. They are very parsimonious with their data. So we are entitled to slap a small quota on some of the stuff. The potential for import replacement in sub-Saharan Africa, where we have 340 million people, a market potentially larger than the United States of America, is enormous, that potential. And Mr. Ramaphosa and Mr. Patel and Mr. Mboweni, and I'd like to believe Gwede Mantesha as well, Minister of Mineral Energy and Affairs, I think they form the core group within the ANC government currently that are driving this new growth and reconstruction plan. We've got the lowest interest rate in 50 years, and this is my number 1 slide, because inflation is still low. Interest rates are likely to remain low. I've had discussions with some fund managers that are in discussions with the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee on a weekly basis, and they have told me that they do not expect interest rates to increase next year, possibly only sometime maybe in 2022 and even maybe beyond that. That is good news, because your lending rate is inversely correlated with durable and non-durable consumption. And the most expensive thing that most people buy in their lifetimes in this country is a house. So this is really good news for residential construction and for capital formation in general. I once shared a platform with one of the trade union leaders, and I asked him whether he knew the definition of a communist, which he didn't. He didn't understand much about anything, by the way, but anyway, so I told him a communist is somebody who has nothing, but he wants to share it with you. He did not find it humorous, and I really enjoyed that. Just to demonstrate the power of lower interest rates. So we ran an econometric model at UJ, Prof. Ilse Botha and myself, and we asked the model to tell us what would South Africa's GDP have been today if the real prime rate, that is now the prime rate, which is currently 7%, minus the CPI, which is currently about 3%. So during John Marcus's term of office, the previous governor of the Reserve Bank, we had an average real prime rate for 5 years of 3%. And we grew our economy in real terms at just below 3%. Then she retired. And I must admit here, it's not only because of the real interest rates having increased to an average of 5.3% and ultimately to more than 6%, which is a 100% increase in the cost of capital. It's also because of state capture. But what the model told us is that if the real prime rate had stayed at 3%, our economy would have been larger to the tune of 560 billion rand. That is one hell of a lot of money. This is a magnificent slide. Our balance of payments is fundamentally so strong that we've got everything it takes to get this economy growing again. This is an all-time record for our trade surplus. And if you've ever doubted whether Mr. Ramaphosa has had an effect on our economy, this slide answers that question. You can clearly see the decline in the foreign direct investment inflows during the financial crisis, previous recession, also during the state capture era, and look what happened after his election. On a lighter note, a friend of mine told me the other day, Roeloef, you know, a recession is worse than a divorce because you also lose half your fortune, but you're still married. I find that rather cynical personally. And this slide, which I will certainly send to Nico on its own. And I'd like it if Nico, if you could send it to all the participants today, because this summarizes, these are 14 reasons why Moody's are clueless as far as sovereign debt is concerned. Our bond yield, shortly after their downgrade of South Africa, did decline. Now, because of COVID, it's a little bit too early to look at that effect. But you can draw a parallel with what happened in Brazil, because that happened at the time when there was no COVID. So we have to go back about 5 years. So when Brazil was downgraded, their bond yield started declining, the value of their bonds increased, and their currency strengthened. And exactly the same thing is happening in South Africa. But this slide also summarizes some of the growth drivers. And the last one, which I just want to knock in there, Andries referred to that, 62 infrastructure projects. This is beautiful stuff because this is not a promise. This is going to happen. It is happening as we speak. And if you think I've been overly bullish, it's been said that a pure optimist believes we live in the best of all possible worlds, and a pure pessimist fears this is true. But if we try to strike a balance, I find this slide fascinating. The Absa, the BER, PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, this is for manufacturing in South Africa, which is still a very large and important sector. That was in September at its highest level in 14 years. A clear indication and a very clear V, actually sort of like a double V, that we are starting to gear for growth. I'll leave you with one other thought, and that is that if you look at the growth forecasts of the 38 economists that participate in the Fin Media panel, to the best of my knowledge, not one single one of them expects negative growth next year. And the median forecast is somewhere between 3 and 4%. I am more bullish. I see no reason whatsoever why we cannot grow our economy at 4% next year and even higher. And I think we will sustain that. My only criticism, in fact, of the mini budget was the fact that the National Treasury has sort of just copied and pasted the World Bank's forecast for 2022, which is below 2%, which I find absolutely ridiculous. Because the last time South Africa had a scenario like this, where we had an imminent construction boom, we had relatively low interest rates, we had a clear indication of increased investor confidence in this economy. That was way back in 2004. We grew this economy for 5 years running at 5%. And then the financial crisis hit us, the subprime crisis, which was not our own making. So I see no reason why we cannot get cracking right now. We are building the foundation for strong growth next year. I hope I'm correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roeloef. Is there any comments or questions from anybody while it's still warm? Andries, any comments, Guy?
I just wondering, it was a fantastic presentation. Thank you. Just on the possibility of lockdown, if South Africa went into a full lockdown again, obviously that would have a huge impact on that very bullish appraisal. How likely is it that the lockdown will come in? What is the business community thinking? And from an economist point of view, how do you see that?
Well, yes, the resurgence of the positive COVID cases in Europe and in the United States, to the best of my knowledge, having looked at some of the I like to believe more trustworthy sources, have been caused by what they call super spreading events. I think some countries just opened up everything a little bit too fast. And of course, then the climate, the winter, the approaching winter is bad news for Europe. Bad news for the Northern Hemisphere. We are going into summer. We are. It's got something to do also with our. I think it's our vaccinations for other diseases, which are compulsory in South Africa, have been for a very long time. It's as if we have maybe a little bit more tenacity. You can see that in our World Rugby Cup. Yes. It's just lighted note. But more importantly, if you look at the trend line for our new cases, it is absolutely still on a downward trajectory. This is fantastic news. And our fatality rate is, I think it's the lowest in the world of countries where you can actually trust the data. Certainly, the lowest in the world. So I like to believe that that's not an option. The worst case scenario for South Africa is that we close the pubs again, which I personally don't think is such a bad idea. As long as we close the bottle stores, let the people have a beer or a nice glass of red wine at home. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe my friend in Northwest can buy another bucket.
Jim?
Nico, yeah, I'm delighted to hear that the South African economy is recovering so well. And if I can just add, I've just been working out the European figures for 2020, and to my amazement, it's showing only something like a 5% decrease on 2019. Some countries a bit worse, like Spain, Italy, down in kind of minus 16, 15%, much less than had been feared originally. And some countries actually doing better than 2019. Then at a global level, I've been getting gain figures together, and yeah, some have suffered modest declines in 2020, like 10%, that sort of thing. The worst, very worst, was Argentina, which with its economic crisis plunged 60%, 60 versus 2019. But other countries like Brazil is actually stronger in 2020 than 2019. India is down about 25%. China, well, maybe lost 7 or 8%, but is steaming ahead again. And so globally, it's looking at something in the region of minus 10%, which is all, I think, very remarkable, and is proving the resilience of our industry. And I'm talking particularly the aggregates, the quarrying industry, to get through this kind of crisis. And it's, I think we've all, in fact, learned lessons and have learned to be more efficient. And despite the challenges of the COVID pandemic in 2020, I think we've learned a lot, and we're coming through stronger at the end of the day, and hopefully look forward to 2021. But, the clouds are it's hard to predict 2021, what's going to really happen at a global level. Do the global economies manage to keep, pushing forward together? But we'll stay optimistic, and I think that's the lesson that was really learned from 2020. Thank you.
Anybody else comment or input questions? I must thank you guys from Ireland and from the UK for joining. It's great to have this world connection, which we didn't have. Yeah, great. And maybe we'll expand on it as 2021 comes. And Dr. Roeloef, thanks for your input. I see some comments say it's excellent. Andries, beautiful, beautiful. I'm so glad that we got you two guys together. And yes, hopefully we can do it in the new year again. Unless there's anybody who wants to make a comment, Gert, I don't know if you want to make a comment, or Roland from PPC, guys, with pleasure.
Nico, no, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that participated. I think it was just fantastic. And thanks to you for organizing all this.
Thanks, Gert.
Thanks, Nico.
Thank you, Nico, also from my side. Much appreciated.
Thanks. Then we're gonna switch off. Then is that all right? Right, guys. All of the best, and keep in touch, please.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I don't know if he's phoning you.